Hey guys, we're filming in the woods again today because there's no space at home. If you're a student like me, you've probably been taking online tests for like almost 2 years now because of COVID. And maybe you've also wondered just exactly what these online tests can track what you're doing on your computer. And that's basically what this video is going to be about. I'm going to try out some of the solutions proposed on Stack Overflow on how to track your tab switching, your mouse movement, your window focus, to get a better understanding of just exactly what tools these online tests have at their disposal. And hopefully this will help you guys better prepare for online tests and decrease the chances of getting caught with your pants down. So I'm also going to try my best to keep it as non-technical as possible because I do understand that there's a lot of non-CS students and I also want to cater to you guys as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So first, let's see how we will be testing this. From Stack Overflow, I've gathered 3 main ways of tracking the user's actions. If you think I missed any, feel free to leave it in the comment section down below and I'll definitely take a look at it. So the first method is listening to a browser event called visibility change. According to the documentation, this event gets triggered when a tab becomes visible or hidden. The next method is periodically calling this function called hasFocus, and this function returns true or false depending on if the document or element has focus or not. The final method I found was listening to the focus in and focus out event. These events get triggered when an element switches from being in focus or not. And then in addition to all this, I've also added a mouse movement listener that listens in on where the mouse is. So now let's take a look at our code. Here's my index.html for my website. It basically contains a bunch of HTML elements with IDs attached to them. Then I have a script section for my JavaScript with all 3 methods I mentioned implemented. If you want to look at this code in detail, I'll have a link in the video description to the source code. I'll just give you guys a quick rundown. For the visibility change, I registered a function that changes the text color and tells us the state it's in. For hasFocus, I have a function that runs every 500 milliseconds to check if the document has focus or not. It also changes the text color just so we can get a visual indicator. And finally, for the focus in and focus out, I basically have the same structure as visibility change, where I register a listener for each. And I just have some code for tracking the mouse movement as well. So to run our server, I'll be using the HTTP server that comes with Python, and I'll just run the server using port 5000. And now we can basically navigate to localhost 5000 to view our website. So first, testing this on Firefox, we can see that when we switch focus between 2 Firefox windows, only the hasFocus function was able to detect that. And even when we focus on a window that's not Firefox, Firefox can still correctly detect that it's not in focus. If we were to change tabs on the window of our website, we get an alert telling us the visibility state has changed to hidden. And now when we come back, it's changed back to visible and we get a notification for that as well. And you can see that our text color has changed as well. But one thing I found interesting was that switching tabs on another window of Firefox doesn't trigger this visibility change event. This means you don't need to use 2 browsers to fool it into thinking you're not looking at other websites. Now you might have noticed that the focus in and focus out event is not working at all. And it turns out it seems to only be working with input fields like text boxes and selectors and buttons. Even though that I added the event listener for the entire document, it seems to only work with input fields. So this event doesn't seem to be very useful. And testing this on Chrome, we get the exact same results, with the only difference being Chrome only shows the visibility alert and not the hidden alert for some reason. So it seems like with the hasFocus function, browsers are pretty smart at detecting whether a student is using other material or not. However, there is still one more test I want to try to overcome this. But before we get into that, first I need to talk about window compositors. Okay, I understand this is a little bit more technical, but just bear with me. So what is a Windows compositor? It's basically the program that controls how your windows are arranged. Like on Windows, you have the desktop window manager, where it facilitates you being able to move your windows around, have one hovering over on top of another, drop shadowing, 2D animations, and so on. On Mac, you have the Quartz window manager, which is pretty much the same thing. It facilitates animations, facilitates windows, multiple desktops, and so on. And on Linux, you have the old X11 and you have the new up-and-coming Wayland. So the reason I bring this up is because A lot of the old window compositing systems, like the one that's still used by Windows, the one that's still used by Mac, and the old X11 on Linux, is that they don't have a lot of security in mind with their design. For example, if we had 3 windows, if you were to type something on your keyboard, all 3 windows would be able to detect it. And the same goes if you were to move your mouse. So I can show you guys a few examples of this. Here I'm streaming a game of Hearthstone on Discord. I have the Discord window on top of the Hearthstone window. But you can see in the stream that Hearthstone is still registering my mouse movements even though that is not in focus. And we can see another example of this with the Excise program on Linux. The Excise program is just a program that follows your mouse around while you're viewing other windows. And you can see that even though that we're looking at other windows, it's still able to track our mouse. So a system like this is very susceptible to things like keyloggers, which logs your keyboard inputs, or mouse trackers, which tracks your mouse input. But it also gives app developers the ability to develop some pretty cool features like Discord's push to talk. If Discord wasn't able to grab your keyboard inputs in the background, then you would have to focus onto Discord before being able to use push to talk, which wouldn't be very ergonomic. So one of the many features of Wayland is that it isolates your input to the focused window. If you were to type something on your keyboard or move your mouse around, only the focused window will receive those inputs. And we can see an example of this. I have the Excise program opened again. This time I have 2 terminals open. One terminal is running on the old legacy X11 and the other one is running on Wayland. You can see that when I move my mouse around inside the X11 window, the eyes are able to track the mouse movements. But as soon as I move my mouse outside of an X11 application or into a Wayland application, it basically can't track your mouse anymore. And the same goes for keyboard input as well, of course. So my theory is because of the old compositing systems, browsers are able to detect where your mouse is, if it's on top of another window or something, and it's able to figure out if you're focused on that window or not. Whereas on Wayland, you can't tell if the mouse is in your window or not. You can't tell if the keyboard's doing something weird or not, because you don't receive any inputs. So switching windows or switching desktops shouldn't tell the browser that you're not in focus anymore, which is why my final test is going to be to try testing my website on a Wayland system. So here I'm on a Wayland system with the Excise program just to show you that our inputs are being isolated to that specific window. And as you can see, unfortunately on Wayland, the browser is still able to detect when you lose focus on a window. We can see here, switching between 2 Firefox windows, it's able to detect when they're in focus and not. And even when we switch over to a different program like a terminal I've opened or Excise, they're still able to detect that they're not in focus anymore. So as you can see, Wayland was still unable to fool the browser into thinking that we were in focus. And I did some research on this, and it turns out when the mouse moves outside of the window, Wayland will send an event over to the window, basically telling the window that it's now unfocused, and that's basically how the browsers are able to detect it. So is this it? Can we not fool the browser into thinking that we're in focus when we're not? And will online tests always be able to track us like this? And I think the answer to that is not really. You see, when I was doing my testing, I got a lot of false positives. For example, here I have 2 windows open and I'm moving my mouse back and forth between the 2 windows, and neither of them are gaining focus. And that's really inconsistent because a student could be focused on the window, but the browser detects it as not in focus. And you don't want to book the wrong person saying they cheated when they actually didn't. And it turns out this has focus function is very sensitive to pretty much anything you do. Click on the title bar, you're out of focus. Click on the bookmark button, you're out of focus. Basically, do anything that's not inside the web page, you're basically out of focus. So I think at the end of the day, this has focus function is not a very consistent way of being able to tell if somebody's a cheater. And I don't think online tests will be using this feature anytime soon. So in the meantime, just don't switch between tabs and you should be good to go. In addition, because Wayland is just a protocol, you can actually code your own compositor to conform to the Wayland standard, and then change your compositor to not send these events to the windows. And in that case, I think you'll be able to fool the browser into thinking you're in focus all the time. But that's probably a topic for another time and will require a lot of work to get done. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a better understanding of what online tests can realistically track. If you have a better way of tracking users while they're doing a test, or have a better way of avoiding being tracked, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.